Notification. There you are.
Okay, hi everyone.
Howdy.
Well, we're starting this Facebook Live today. It's May 9th and a chilly morning. And okay, hi everyone.
Howdy.
Hi.
Well, we're starting this. I have my mic on. I'm hearing it. YouTube Live. Okay, that's turned off. It's May 9th.
Does somebody else have theirs on?
Say
Okay.
something. Say something again, Amy.
Okay, hello everyone.
Howdy.
We're
Hi.
trying to make sure, we think someone's got their mic on their YouTube, on their Facebook feed. Because if you do, it's going to come through. Well, let's get started here. What is it? This is Gardening Questions Answered for the Knoxville Area Gardening Tips. My name is Amy Hahn. I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. And with me are several others. Our other group of men, Brian Townsend, Toby Johnson, and Roseanne Smith are joining me today. They're going to be watching the comments, and if anyone does a rose or a grass question, Brian will probably be taking that, as those are not my main areas. So while we're waiting for questions, I'm going to go ahead and show you some of my photos from this morning. Well, this past week. Let me get this set up right. Sharing my screen. Okay, so that is my bird bath this morning. The predicted temperature for here was not below freezing, but can you see the ice in there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the center, floating in the center.
Yep, it is definitely a little bit frosted over. Okay, now I've got to figure out how to go to the next picture. That was the forecast about a week ago, or well, earlier this week. The forecast was 38 degrees. The weather station at my house read 31. So
below freezing.
you definitely have to be aware of what your temperature at your house is. If you can have a thermometer,
microclimates.
Yeah, if you can have a thermometer at your house, outside, in a spot not too close to the house, you get a much better idea of how your weather compares to the prediction.
Yep.
Well, this is another thing that's going on at my house. A pair of frogs has taken up residence in my water lily bucket. I think they have tadpoles now. We'll see. The other thing is not so happy. Fire ants in my raised bed.
Oh.
Yeah, I treated them with a product that was safe for vegetable gardens, and I think they just moved to the next bed. Wow. So we'll see what happens with those. I'll try to keep you all posted if you're interested. Do we have any questions yet?
Miss Amy.
Yeah.
You know that fire ants may have one main mound, and after a good rain, that mound will show up at the surface right there. But they have multiple satellite mounds in there. So if you say this raised bed right here, you kill that, get that under control, the ants are just reestablished among those satellites.
Well, I just would like to have them not in my raised beds.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it? I thought this one was interesting. It's a Carolina mantis egg case, but they decided to lay it on the tire of one of my wheelbarrows. Probably not the best place. I know bees are a big thing right now. And so this is my mason bee house. And as you can see, they like it. Here's
Right.
another picture of it. This
Amy.
is actually an earlier picture of it before they were active this spring. So you can see how much it's filled up since that one.
Amy, I've got a question for you.
Oh, wonderful.
It didn't come in on in the chat, but I would love to ask it anyway.
Okay, you can ask.
In terms of your mason bee house, where is the best place to locate that? And what time of year should you put it up? And should you take it down at the end of the year?
Oh gosh, those are difficult questions. I know I've got it in a place that gets morning sun.
Okay.
And is sheltered in the afternoon. I think they do say a sheltered place is best.
Okay.
You want it up, I think it's 5 to 8 feet from the ground.
Okay.
I probably don't have mine in the best place. It's leaning against a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
But you do want it in a place that rodents won't get to it and things like that. Early spring, I know they were active in February.
Yeah.
So anytime the temperatures go above about 45.
And what's a good, what's a reason to have that? I mean, I'm assuming it should be, you would want it near your your veggie garden if you wanted things pollinated, for example. Are they going to pollinate for you?
Probably these mason bees won't. They're active too early. They're probably the pollinators of the fruit trees more than the vegetables.
Okay.
Most native bees are only active for a couple weeks a year.
Okay.
And then they're in egg or larval form.
Okay.
So they're not active. But there's over 4,000 native bees in the US.
Wow.
Yeah, and only 30% of them are cavity nesters that would even be likely to use tubes like that. But 30% of them is quite a lot. The rest are actually ground nesting.
Okay.
So we've gotten a lot of questions early this year, people seeing small mounds in their dirt or even patches of them. And that can be, each one is a solitary bee, but they'll make they'll nest near each other.
Okay.
So you'll have more than one of some species, and they'll all come up around the same time. So you'll end up with all these small holes appearing in your yard.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing to know is these bees almost never sting.
Nice.
They are capable of it, but honeybees generally only sting to guard their hive, or when they've been stepped on, or you grab them, inadvertently. And these bees are like that, but the honeybees will sting to guard their hive. These bees don't have a hive to guard, and they don't have a honey store to guard, and they don't have a lot of baby bees to guard.
Okay.
Each female supplies her own eggs with the food they need to grow. Temperature for here was a lot of baby bees to guard.
Great.
Each female supplies her own eggs with the food.
Amy, your voice is getting very
I'm hearing
soft.
my voice. Does everyone who's on the Zoom have the volume on their
That was me.
Facebook
Sorry.
down?
That was me.
Oh, that was you. Okay.
Well, I hit Facebook and then I don't know.
Right, it turned it
Okay.
back.
Sorry.
A question about that rosette disease. Can you see it? Does it always look red, or could you get some weird green branches?
Brian, do you have the answer to that one?
On the tips of roses with rosette disease will show red on there, and that red stays there, as opposed to when this time of year when we have a lot of rapid new growth, and we will see red tips, red leaves and stuff. But after a week or so, that red turns to green as the nutrients are drawn back up into the upper leaves. But rosette disease will still show the witch's broom effect, the red on the blooms, the rose leaves, and the stems right there. Also, it's quite common to see a an extended amount of thorns, prickles on this red growth.
Could you define witch's broom for people who don't know what that looks like?
Witch's broom looks like leaves that have been withered at the tips end, where the new growth should be growing right there. So I wish I could pull up a picture of this right here. I don't know if I can, but if I could, like I said, I wish I could pull a picture up here to point this out here. One thing that I commonly, when I hear about witch's broom on the end of a rose cane, I want to ask whether there's any chance of herbicide damage, because roses are very sensitive to herbicides and they can show up that effect, and it looks like witch's broom. So you could have either or.
I'm going to share my screen right quick so you all can see a picture of rose rosette. Let me share that. There you go. Is that a good picture, Brian?
Yes, ma'am. I see the on tips right here. I don't know if I could blow that up or not. Look at these stems right here. See, if you look at this carefully, there are so many more thorns or prickles on here than lower down where you have more established growth. That's a sign of rose rosette disease. Also, these red greenish growth at the ends right here. The leaves are streppled. They're thin, and they look like, I guess, I don't, I was married to a witch, but I never saw her broom, so I don't know.
Okay. Do we have any other questions at this point?
Yes, we do have a question. There's a question from Emily. She says, "Hey guys," she got ambitious and planted her veggie garden, and so everything was covered up with clear plastic row coverings. So should we uncover the plants today and then recover them this evening?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, clear plastic, definitely uncover them. We're supposed to get up into the 60s today with a lot of sun. You can cook your vegetable garden very easily.
I would also want, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Also, with clear plastic, you want to have it raised up so it's not touching your plants, because it holds in the heat, but it doesn't have much insulative value. So anywhere the plant is touching and you get a frost, the frost will actually go through that plastic.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to remove that today, and you want to put it on tonight. Put it back on tonight. Okay, do we have any other questions?
How many more days of frost do we have coming? Just tonight?
I hope. What is it? We are well past our expected frost dates currently.
I know.
So it is really hard to say. The weather's being pretty difficult for us.
Yeah, the other thing I would add to the frost, because last night I was running around covering stuff and I did a little research myself. If you have cool season veggies, you don't have to worry about those. They actually like the frost, and they actually will sometimes taste better with a little bit of frost.
Oh yeah.
Your lettuces, your broccoli, your kale, your stuff like that, they're happy. They love it. In fact, they're happier now than they are going to be in the summertime.
But so yes,
your warm season, your tomatoes, your peppers, your okra, if you have any of those out, I always buy a couple of, I cheat and I buy a couple of big plants from Costco in the early spring, and I have made the mistake of putting those out and then not getting them covered up and they die. But because you get early fruit, I already have a tomato growing on one of them. So last night I was like out there, getting the other
scrambling.
Amory, what's your opinion on putting, sometimes what I'll do seedlings, or I'll do seeds in the ground. I'll put a plastic milk jug that's the bottoms cut off, and I put it on there to kind of make a little baby greenhouse. What's your opinion on using those for baby seedlings that are in the ground to cover them overnight, but then take them off in the daytime? Are those possible?
That technique has been used for centuries. It's called quashing.
Uh-huh.
And it is a covering. And can be very helpful in the spring. The important thing is to take the cover off, or if it's a milk jug and it's not getting really warm that day, you can just take the lid off. And that can ventilate it enough. Now, I'm going to share my screen again because I went and looked at the forecast for this week.
Yeah.
And this kind of weather is really hard on plants because, what is it? Nearly freezing and frosts, last night and tonight is what we're looking at. And lows in the 40s and below. And then next week, we're looking at highs in the 80s.
Yeah.
So that can be really hard on plants. The other thing it can be hard on is watering. There's some chance of rain nearly every day. Yeah. And so what do you do about watering? And that's where the finger comes in. You stick your finger an inch, 2 inches down into the dirt near your plants. And if it feels dry at the bottom of that, then you do need to water, and you want to water deeply a couple times a week. It's fairly likely plants will get stressed with that kind of temperature changes in that short a time.
So okay, a question.
We have a question, yes.
So cover the plants. Are sheets better than plastic?
I like sheets better than plastic for this kind of thing. Actually, in our climate, I like sheets, or even better, floating row cover, which is a little more forgiving. But with sheets, they're more forgiving because they let some air flow. Mm-hmm. And they're not as likely to accidentally cook the plants if the sun comes out before you get out there.
Plus, they're not, if you have condensation,
yeah,
it's not going to get up there and then freeze and then drop off on your plants.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, you can still have the contact issue where, it gets cold at the outer parts where it touches the fabric, but it's not as much of an issue.
One other question, Amy. What about watering? Is it a good idea? Now, yesterday we didn't have a choice. It rained.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If it's a dry frost the day before, does it help shore up the plants to have to water the evening time right before it gets frosty? Or is it better to have a dry ground?
It is better to have it moist. It's better to water before a frost, because it takes energy to convert that water to ice. Mm-hmm. And like the nights we're having, we're not in the 30s. We haven't been below freezing for very many hours. Mm-hmm. And so it would take a while for the ground to freeze. Now, a bird bath hanging off a patio railing is going to freeze quickly because it's got air all around it that's that cold. But with the ground, you do have some stored warmth in the ground, and the water helps transmit it. Mm-hmm. Temperature transmits through water much quicker than through air. And so if the soil is dry, that's air in the soil, and the temperature will transmit quicker into the air, and your plants are much more likely to suffer damage if they're dry versus wet.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because it's counterintuitive. Mm-hmm. You would think, no, I don't want my ground to be wet because it's going to freeze up. But it's counterintuitive, gang. But yeah, thank you for explaining that in more detail. Appreciate it.
Yes. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Emily says, should I go up and cover my bed? I think I'll check back if you're still going.
Oh, I think you're okay for another 10 minutes.
Okay, no, Emily.
I was going to get some sun.
Yeah, I think you'd be fine for another 10 minutes, which is about how much we have on this, unless we get a lot of questions. Okay, do we have any other questions?
There was a request. Can you recommend a book or resource for creating an herb spiral? And I did send a couple of links, but Amy, you are the expert on the herb spiral.
It is not described in very many books. There is one that I know of that has it. It's this one right here. Can you all see it? Is it reversed for you, or is it?
No, it says edible landscaping
permaculture twist.
Oh.
And he describes a lot of I wouldn't call
Who's the author?
The author is Michael Judd. There's his name.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I just pulled this out the other day because I was working on something related to herb spirals. And I actually take care of the herb spiral that's at UT Gardens, just it's east of the kitchen garden there, if you want to come see it.
I just posted a link to the book in the chat.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Okay, are there any more questions? Because if we don't have any more questions, I'll go back to my slideshow.
Oh, here's a question. When are you going to plan a meet and greet?
There is a little issue right now. One of the things is I wasn't the one planning the meet and greets, even though they were lovely. That was Joni. And so she hasn't been able to plan them this year, as we all know. But when we are able, I would love to have a meet and greet. And if someone in the group would like to volunteer to take the lead on contacting garden centers about that, I would be very open to that. What is it? I have too many things on my plate to do that right now. But if someone else would contact me about taking the lead on that, I would be I'm very open to that. But definitely can't do it until, as master gardeners, the extension has told us we're not supposed to do public events until after the end of July. So that's a ways off.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't think, we'll be staging through the stages for opening back up. And so we're looking at, small maximum of like 10 people gathering for a month at least, and then it'll open up for slightly smaller. So I think we're looking at late summer at the earliest. I wish we could do it earlier. And if we would like to do a meet and greet through Zoom or some other virtual way, we can look into that.
Mm-hmm. We have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron says that permaculture is a good word to look up in association with herb spirals in general.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things about permaculture is, if you haven't heard of it, it's a philosophy of trying to do things that are permanent agriculture. And now more recently, they're talking more about permanent culture, to do things in a way that continues. A lot of what they do with permaculture is experimental. And so as a master gardener, I can't necessarily recommend all the techniques, but some of them have been tested and some of them do work. And some of them do, like the herb spiral sets up a situation where you have a lot of different microclimates. You have different places that suit different kind of plants. So you have the high up that on the top of the spiral where it's dry and gets lots of sun. And that really works for a lot of the Mediterranean plants like the tarragon, the rosemary, the lavender, really like that. And then you have other plants that need a bit more moisture. And so those can go lower on the herb spiral. The plants that need that are just leafy, that you're just looking for leaves, they'll last longer on the north side where they get less sun. So I always try to plant the basil toward the north side because it gets less sun and it won't flower as quickly. So there's a lot of different things, about an herb spiral that it creates microclimates that you can use. But yeah.
Amy, I put a link to North Carolina State. They have a resource page on permaculture.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
And there's a permaculture institute.
Yes.
There's another book called Gaia's Garden on permaculture.
Yeah, there's a lot of books on gardening. Gaia's Garden is one of the ones that a lot of people like. I have attempted to read it several times and have not personally made it all the way through it.
Yeah, me neither. The other area of permaculture is forest gardening. And so I posted a link to another extension. So if you're interested in that, I don't know if it's going to have any info on specifically for herbs, but might
it probably will, because herbs are quite often used in the understory of a forest garden.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a technique where you use a lot of layering of different heights of plants. And
yeah, I think the key foundational concept of permaculture, from the way I understand it, is biodiversity.
Yeah, biodiversity is big. Making full use of resources. There's a list of principles, and I used to know exactly how many principles there were, and different people argue about which is which because it's there's no this is the permaculture law.
Yeah.
So, but it's a really interesting topic to look at and a really interesting way of thinking about things to look at.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to go on to my next photo. So that's my, come on, let me change it's not letting me go back. There we go. Okay, I thought this was just a beautiful picture. This is different lichens on the bark of my pear tree. And there's really nothing wrong with my pear tree. The lichens, they could grow on rocks. So they're just using it as a place to settle. They're not taking anything from the tree. So they're just living on the bark. And it probably is an indication that there's quite a bit of sun. It's also getting to that area. It's also an indication that I have good air quality. Because lichens only come up when there's good air quality. Oh, that must be my last photo.
Okay. Well, I have a question. Does poison ivy growing on a tree take something away from the tree?
I'm not absolutely sure about that. I don't think so. Okay. Brian, do you know that? Do you know if poison ivy takes away from the strength of the tree? I think it just holds on to it, that it's actually getting its food, it's getting its water and everything from its roots. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty positive, because I know when you cut off the roots, all that's grown up a tree will die. And if it were getting energy from the tree, it wouldn't die.
I was just hoping it wasn't harming the tree. I have a lot of trees with poison ivy, and I'm not inclined to go cut it off. They look like they're getting along just fine.
Well, if you get too much, it can, the poison ivy will grow out onto the branches, and it'll actually I think, kill branches by just blocking too much light. I think that's the way ivy kills trees too. So, that is something to think about if you're seeing a lot of poison ivy up in the tree canopy. The other thing is you're probably ending up, if it's that big, you're ending up with seeds and you're spreading it to everyone else. Mm-hmm. And is that necessarily something you want to do to your neighbors?
Well, they're not close enough.
I like Erin's comment. Huggability is lost.
Yeah, I can't really hug that tree.
That's a good one, Erin.
And if you have pets, they can walk through it and bring it in. I had a friend who was convinced they had bed bugs. but their dogs slept in their bed, and they were getting a rash from the dogs bringing poison ivy oil. Yeah. You know, the doctor was like, that's not bed bugs. That's poison ivy. I've been bitten by bed bugs before. The bites are very characteristic and very awful. Okay, do we have any more questions? Because we're a little after 9:30 right now. So I would like to thank everyone who came to join us. And next time I'm going to do a better job at announcing this, and we're going to plan this as a weekly event. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you all later.